you to the Joy of Biology 420 series. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation for you to drag out your little dry erase markers and draw along with us. Or just drag up the old easy chair and enjoy a relaxing half hour as we draw some of nature's masterpieces on the whiteboard. For those of you who have been with us for a while, thank you very, very much. You already know the basics. And for those of you that haven't, don't worry, we have you covered. Tell you what, let's get right to it. Today, we'll be drawing the natural beauty of meiosis. Let's start today and have all of our colors run across the screen.
Love that screen.
Let's start out with some interphase in
Blue. Ravioli.
Okay, let's start out with some interphase in. Let's start out with some interphase.
Bob, you forgot the basics.
Oh dear, my apologies. Here, let me explain a few concepts first. Everyone should know what mitosis is, but just a reminder, it's asexual reproduction that results in the production of identical cells. Now, some important notes for meiosis. It's important to know to understand. Homologous chromosomes. Those are chromosomes in which they are identical, and one set comes from the male and one set comes from the female. Now, sex chromosomes are one or two chromosomes that define an individual sex. Haploid cells, or chromosomes, excuse me, are cells that contain only one set of genes, and diploid cells contain two sets. How lucky. Sperm cells are the male sex cells, and egg cells are the female sex cells. They're both gametes, which is just a sex cell. Now, a zygote is the fertilized egg, and crossing over, well, we'll get to that later. Now, when I was painting in my garden the other day, I witnessed a true miracle. When a mommy and a daddy squirrel love each other very much, sometimes they choose to engage in a process of meiosis. Now, I have a baby squirrel. It is one of my best friends, and I love taking care of it. I digress. Before meiosis 1, sex cells start in interphase. After the synthase portion of interphase, they become diploid cells, which means they contain two sets of homologous chromosomes. After interphase, our cells enter prophase 1, the first stage of meiosis. A few exciting things begin to occur. The chromosomes condense. Just take a look at those beauties. Oh heavens. Those beauties. As the nucleus breaks down, poof, the centrioles and spindle fibers form. Most importantly, our buddies from before, the homologous chromosomes, pair up. Think of them as soulmates. Okay. The fro gets a little hot sometimes. The next stage they enter is metaphase 1. The homologous pairs line up together like they're getting ready to do a little line jig. Their buddies, the spindle fibers, give them a nice little hug and connect them to the opposite poles like this. Yes. Sometimes we have to get the marker juice flowing. Just beat the devil out of it. Now, with the start of anaphase, we're going to use our color ravioli marker. In anaphase, the spindle fibers take their homologous soulmates on a little field trip towards opposite ends of the pole. Look at that beauty. Sometimes the best part is the journey, not the destination. Our next stage is telophase 1. The homologous pairs finally reach the opposite poles. And as the spindle fibers break down, two brand new nuclei form. What a miracle. The chromosomes in those nuclei uncondense because they're a little shy. Ain't that cute? After telophase, or during telophase, we have cytokinesis. Now, like we discussed earlier, these cell just pinches and forms 2 new cells. Meiosis dosis. After we finish drawing our 2 little happy haploid friends, they start interphase again, because now they're experts. As our happy little haploids, our 2 new friends have exactly half the chromosomes they began our fun time with in meiosis 1. Now, friends, we are going to turn up the heat and enter meiosis dosis. Now, don't get scared, because meiosis dosis is really just the same process as before, but instead of separating the homologous soulmates, the sister chromatids, these little happy friends, happy little chromosomes, they split up instead. Now, this is like if you were to potentially split someone in half, gently of course. Now, let's get a little crazy here. Unlike before, where our cell went through all the phases of interphase, the first time they went through interphase, the cell went through G1, where it grew and acted normally. Then synthase, where the genetic material doubled. And finally, G2, where it functioned normally again, before ending its interphase trip to start meiosis 1. Woo, what an incredible journey. But now, our cell has been done there and gotten the t-shirt, so they will only be going through the G2 phase, second time around. I had to take a quick little snack break, but here we have our interphase drawing. But in meiosis dosis, only the G2 part occurs. Now, our chromosomes are all condensed, and even though they're having a jolly time floating around and mingling, they decide to get right down to business and do another little jig. Now, our chromosome friends move into metaphase, where they all line up along the center of the cell to await the spindle fiber's warm embrace. After their little reunion, anaphase happens.
Bob?
After their little reunion, anaphase happens, and the spindle fibers betray their friends and rip them in half. Not everyone can be happy all the time. Our spindle fibers pull the dismembered sister chromatids toward the opposite ends of the cell, just like before, but don't worry, things are in store for this cell. Keep in mind, the sister chromatids can go in either direction because they're free spirits, like me and you. Once our friends reach opposite sides of the cell, the adventure of telophase begins. Here, our spindle fibers go on a little vacation and break down, and 2 new nuclei form around these separated chromatids to protect them. Once they're safe and sound, they uncondense after a long day's work. After our chromatids are happily inside their new nuclei, the cell splits in half to form 2 gametes. Now we have 4 new friends. The other 2 are off on some other little vacation. Here are other 2 cells that were formed. They came back from vacation. And as you can see, cytokinesis is explained very well here, as this just pinches. Our cytoplasm green is running out a little bit, and forms
Chloroplast green.
and chloroplast green, excuse me, and forms 2 new little cells on each one, 4 in total. These gametes can now be combined to make more baby squirrels like this little guy. Okay, now friends, we have completed the beautiful process of meiosis 2, also known as meiosis dosis. Sometimes you just gotta stay clean. Now, sometimes we have happy little accents, but we can't turn these into happy little trees. But we can turn them into Down syndrome. Down syndrome happens when someone gets a bonus copy of genetic material on all or part of the 21st chromosome. People with Down syndrome are a little different, aren't we all? Now, this can happen when, they just get pulled. They just get a little too excited and start going to the wrong hole. Like, sometimes you want to visit Santa, and sometimes you just want to go to the South Pole. And they just go rogue and go by themselves, and we end up with happy little accidents like that. Now, meiosis is a little different than mitosis because it can form genetic diversity because the daughter cells aren't the same as the parent cells. So, what we have here is an example of crossing over. Now, when all the chromosomes are lined up in metaphase, they sometimes just trade genes, and that's how we can get different looking sisters or siblings, and they're from the exact same parents, but yet they're not the exact same people. Like here, we have two sisters, and although they don't look the same, they are related because their parents' genes crossed over. Genes! Today, we are lucky enough to have a special treat. One of these sisters from earlier in the video is here to explain genetic diversity and how she did end up different than her sister.
So there's 3 ways that genetic diversity can occur through meiosis. The first way is through crossing over, which we illustrated earlier, which is when during metaphase 1, the chromosome pairs
Homologous.
The homologous okay.
Chromosomes.
The homologous chromosomes cross
Amazon
over
Prime.
and then trade pieces, and yes. There's also the reduction to haploid way that genetic diversity can occur, which is when, because of the way they split apart, it's not guaranteed that the same genes cross over. So if you have parents, so the initial generation, right, mom and dad both have 46 chromosomes. But even though their kid will have 23, it's not guaranteed when that person mates with a lucky
Person.
Yes. When they have children, it's not guaranteed that the same fraction from grandmother is exactly the same as the fraction of genetic material they received from the grandfather. And because of that, this reduction to haploid, when we take the genetic material and then lower it, is what gives us genetic diversity.
So from all of us here, I'd like to wish you a happy painting, and God bless, my friend.